On January 23, 1959, 10 young, experienced hikers boarded a train in Sverdlovsk, headed for the northern Ural Mountains. They were fit, they were joyful, and they were led by Igor Dyatlov, a man who knew these peaks like the back of his hand. Their destination was Otorten, a name in the local Mansi language that translates chillingly to "don't go there." By February 26th, a search party would find their tent. It was slashed open from the inside. Their belongings, boots, coats, and food were left untouched. And the hikers? They were found scattered across the frozen waste, miles away, some nearly naked in sub-zero temperatures, others with injuries that resembled a high-speed car crash, but with no external bruising. The Soviet investigators called it a compelling natural force. We call it a cover-up. Welcome back to Grim Lore. Today, we step into the blinding white silence of Dead Mountain to uncover what the Soviet Union tried to erase from the archives. The group consisted of 8 men and 2 women, mostly students and graduates of the Ural Polytechnic Institute. They were Grade 2 hikers on their way to earning Grade 3, the highest certification available in the USSR. This wasn't a group of amateurs. On January 25th, they reached the town of Ivdel. From there, a truck took them to Vizhai, the last inhabited settlement before the wilderness. On January 27th, disaster almost struck early, but in hindsight, it was a blessing. Yuri Yudin, one of the hikers, developed severe back pain and had to turn back. As he hugged his friends goodbye, he had no idea he was the only one who would live to see his 30s. For the next 4 days, the remaining 9 pushed deeper into the taiga. They followed the Lozva River, moving through a landscape where the sun barely skims the horizon before vanishing. On February 1st, they began to climb the slope of Kholat Syakhl, the Dead Mountain. The weather turned violent. Blinding snow reduced his ability to 0. Instead of retreating to the tree line for cover, Dyatlov made a fateful decision. They would pitch their tent right there, on the exposed, frozen ribs of the mountain. At 10:30 p.m., they shared a final meal. They were laughing. We know this because they left a humorous newspaper they had written for each other. But shortly after, something happened. Something so terrifying, it broke the minds of 9 seasoned mountaineers. When the group failed to send a telegram to their sports club by February 12th, families grew worried. By February 20th, a massive search operation involving the military and volunteers began. 6 days later, they found the tent. It was buried under a thin layer of snow, but it was still standing. When the rescuers leaned in, they felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The tent had been cut open with a knife multiple times from the inside. It looked as if the occupants had been so desperate to get out that they couldn't even wait to find the zipper. Outside, in the -30-degree cold, they found footprints. 8 or 9 pairs of prints made by people wearing only socks, a single boot, or completely bare feet. They were walking, not running, down the slope toward a cedar tree 1.5 kilometers away. Beneath that cedar, they found the first two bodies, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonischenko. They were stripped to their underwear. Their hands were charred from a fire they had desperately tried to keep lit. Above them, the branches of the cedar were snapped up to 5 meters high. It looked like they had been climbing frantically, trying to see something or hide from something. Between the tree and the tent, 3 more bodies were found: Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin. They died in poses suggesting they were trying to crawl back to the tent, back to their warmth, back to their survival. But it was the final 4, found months later in a ravine, that turned a tragedy into a conspiracy. Nikolai Thibault-Brenyor had a crushed skull. Semyon Zolotaryov and Lyudmila Dubenina had massive chest fractures. The lead doctor, Boris Vozrozhdeny, said these injuries were consistent with a high-pressure blast, similar to the force of a car moving at 50 miles per hour. Yet there was no soft tissue damage, no bruises. It was as if their bones had been shattered by an invisible wave. Then there were the missing pieces. Dubenina was missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her lips. While some claim scavengers are to blame, the precision of the missing tissue led many to believe something more clinical had occurred. But the detail that truly froze the investigation was the radiation. Testing on the hikers' clothing revealed high levels of radioactive contamination, specifically beta radiation. Why would students on a hiking trip be carrying radioactive particles in the middle of the Ural wilderness? And then there were the witnesses. Another group of hikers, located 50 kilometers away, reported seeing strange orange orbs floating in the sky toward Kholat Syakhl on the night of the incident. These orbs have been a staple of Soviet military sightings for decades. The Soviet investigation was abruptly closed in May 1959. The official verdict: an unknown, compelling force. The files were sent to a secret archive, and the area was cordoned off for years. Was it an avalanche? Recent studies suggest a rare slab avalanche might have occurred. But does an avalanche explain why they walked 1.5 kilometers away instead of digging out their gear? Does it explain the radiation? Does it explain the orange orbs? Some believe they wandered into a secret Soviet weapons test, perhaps a parachute mine or an infrasound weapon. Infrasound, caused by the wind over the mountain's shape, can create Kármán vortex streets, producing low-frequency sounds that trigger intense panic, nausea, and a feeling of impending doom in humans. Did the mountain itself drive them mad? The truth remains buried under the snows of Kholat Syakhl. The hikers are gone, but the dead mountain still speaks to those who listen. I'm your narrator, and the shadows always have a voice. Don't forget to subscribe. You never know what we'll dig up next.